Bring to us your poetry from inspiration sought. Come join us with your images, your verses, words, and thought. From here we'll share your balladry with those who do not know it. This platform's here for you to show the world that you're the poet.
Welcome to episode 28 of You're the Poet, the poetry podcast featuring you. I'm host Matt Burgio, and I'm here with co-host Phil Burgio. Phil, welcome.
Thank you, Matthew.
Here at You're the Poet, our purpose is to share our love of poetry with the world and invite you to do the same. I want to start by saying thank you to our listeners who have made You're the Poet possible. We hope you enjoy the podcast and the poetry that is shared here. Our featured guest for this episode of You're the Poet is Gabrielle Myers, who is joining us from California. Gabrielle, welcome.
Thank you, Matt. Nice to be here.
We're glad you could join us, and we look forward to your contribution to the episode. To start things off, I'm going to share a classic poem for the episode. Kind of jumping back 2 episodes when we talked about Sir Thomas Wyatt, I wanted to build off of that and read a Shakespeare poem. It's been almost a whole year now that we've been doing this podcast, and we have not actually featured Shakespeare, which I think is pretty impressive, or sad, however you want to look at that. I won't say a whole lot about Shakespeare because a lot of people are familiar with him. He was an English poet, playwright, and actor. He lived from 1564 to 1616. He died at the age of 51 or 52. He's often called England's national poet and the Bard of Avon, or just the Bard. He's noted in poetry for his 154 sonnets, which were first published together in 1609. There's also 6 other sonnets that are not part of that larger collection that are included in his various plays. Shakespeare continues the sonnet tradition introduced to England by Sir Thomas Wyatt, who we talked about in episode 26 with Jacob Piercy, and he utilizes that 3-quatrain rhyming couplet form that Henry Howard used. I do want to take a moment to note here for anybody that listened to episode 26 that I misspoke and I said 4 quatrains and a rhyming couplet, but obviously sonnets are 14 lines typically, so that's 3 quatrains with the rhyming couplet. Anyway, his sonnets cover a variety of themes such as love, passage of time, jealousy, infidelity, beauty, and mortality. Of the 154, they're kind of divided into 2 parts. The first 126 are addressed to a young man, and the last 28 are either addressed to or refer to a woman. I mentioned that they were written with the 3 quatrains and a rhyming couplet for the most part, that 14-line sonnet. So the rhyme scheme was A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, and G, G for the couplet. There's often a volta or turn at the end of the 3rd quatrain, and the meter, like most typical sonnets, is the iambic pentameter. So I'm going to be reading Sonnet 147, which is one of my favorite Shakespearean sonnets. This falls into the sequence of sonnets known as the Dark Lady sonnets. That's the group of sonnets 127 to 154. These sonnets are associated with a woman of dark physical and moral features. In this sonnet, he's describing his love or desire for this mistress as a sickness or a fever, kind of a growing madness. And then the couplet provides kind of a shift to addressing the lady of his anguish, and not really in the most pleasant terms. But anyway, here's Sonnet 147. My love is as a fever, longing still, for that which longer nurseth the disease, feeding on that which doth preserve the ill, the uncertain sickly appetite to please. My reason, the physician to my love, angry that his prescriptions are not kept, hath left me, and I desperate now approve, desire as death, which physic did accept. Past cure I am, now reason is past care, and frantic mad with evermore unrest. My thoughts and my discourse as madmen's are, at random from the truth vainly expressed. For I have sworn thee fair, and thought thee bright, who art as black as hell, as dark as night. William Shakespeare. All right, so that's Sonnet 147, one of my favorites, and one that I had memorized at one time when I was memorizing poems. I think it always strikes me because of someone who has always kind of been the hopeless romantic and has gone through various relationships. I think this one kind of rings true to anybody that's struggled with that concept of loving someone that maybe is not necessarily loving them back the same way that they love them. I've kind of always liked that sonnet for that reason, I think.
It's about time we got some Shakespeare in there.
It is. I love how there's that metaphor, my reason, the physician to my love, and reason and logic are kind of working to maybe bring some reality to the hopeless romantic that is the speaker of the poem. And I love how there's that turn and that acknowledgement of the darkness, especially at the end, towards the lover, and how love is perhaps like this disease that should be cured and that the speaker doesn't want to really engage with fully. There's that sense of being wary of it and kind of knowing that the love that once appeared innocent is really not so innocent and perhaps might have some kind of malintent, which is a nice turn, I think, on what a lot of traditional love poems do, which is kind of revere the lover in sometimes in unrealistic ways.
Right. I agree with you there.
Now, usually when I write a poem, a love poem, it's specific, one lady, and I've been doing that for a long time, and so I don't wander off into the dark side. That's just me, though.
Yeah, you've definitely been blessed with that in life.
I see the sign behind you. 50 years, is it?
Yeah, she passed away a couple of years ago,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
but she's still with me.
Yeah, so in 2021, they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. We threw them a big party. And then
Good times.
I believe she died the following spring. So
Yeah.
pancreatic cancer.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But all right, from here, we're going to turn it over to Phil to share his poetry for the episode. Phil?
Yeah, I wrote this poem after visiting my niece, my goddaughter. She lives in Cleveland. I live down here by Cincinnati, so we don't get together that often. We correspond a lot, but we don't get together that often. And when we do, we cook together. And the last time I was up there, she showed me something that her husband had made for her, and it's explained in the poem. The poem was titled The Bladesmith. Hammer and anvil and robust zeal, the bladesmith pounds on the red-hot steel. Grinding and shaping into a knife, he gives the scrap metal a brand-new life. Though strong and calloused and rough as sand, he works the steel with a delicate hand. Not for hurt, not for harm, he fashions the knife for the kitchen warm. Made for the hand of his dear wife, this wonderful tool, this kitchen knife. Philip Burgio. She showed me a knife that he had made for her, and I was really impressed.
That's beautiful. I love the sensory details that you weave throughout the poem and how at first it sounds like when I think one normally associates like a knife and a blade with something violent or negative.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that turn at the end towards like this tender kind of intimate moment for the couple. That is such a nice contrast, I think.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of the things I really like about it. And I love it from the very beginning. I think that first couplet that you have, that hammer and anvil and robust zeal, the bladesmith pounds on the red hot steel. I just love the way those first two lines flow into the intro of that. Very nice.
And it's a nice kitchen knife, too.
All right, from here we're going to move to my poem for the episode. Since we were talking about sonnets and talking about Shakespeare, I thought I'd pull out one of my sonnets that followed that Shakespearean form, or that English sonnet form of the 3 quatrains with the rhyming couplet. I wrote this for a lady, and kind of remind me of some of other typical, what I would call, this is sort of like a cliche or typical sonnet that you would read as far as them describing their love and comparing them to things. So this is Sonnet number 3 from my love. Can I compare my love to a dewdrop that glistens in the morning sun so bright, with shapes of pearl that slopes to teardrop top, which appears when the stars fade at sun's light? Or the blossom of the flower in May, after April showers gently settle, where my love and I upon the shore lay, and smell the sweet perfume of its petal? How about the snowflake falling unique, that floats gently down from up above, to land and silently melt on her cheek, which warms my heart by smile, without a fuss? None of these match the beauty she contains, for nature's greatest gift she yet remains. Matthew Burgio.
Dag, son, you're romantic.
I try.
It's beautiful, I think. I really like how the speaker works through a series of questions, comparing the lover to transient natural images. So things that kind of fade and turn. And there's that questioning, like, can I compare you to this? Can I compare you to that? And then finally, there's this movement like, no, the love can't compare to anything, right? The love is unmatched, really, and kind of outside or beyond comparison, which is a really neat motion in the poem.
Thank you.
That's one of your better ones. I really like that one.
Thank you. All right, from here, we're going to turn to our guest portion of the episode. Gabrielle, you're the poet. Show us what you've got.
Okay. I'm going to read a poem called Feathers Falling from my poetry collection, Break Cell Feed, which was just published in August of 2024. Feathers Falling. Dragonflies steady themselves above tilled grasses, dive to nudge their noses in soil clod's coolness. Our hummingbird, the one we see every morning, dips down to eye level, wing hum, eye lock, accelerated rise. Our wells run dry in the mountains. Neighbors pull water for weed grows, wine grapes. Spring's trickles feed blackberry thickets and watercress, which shrink to fit August's drip. In the valley, smoke nestles rice tips, coddles a playground's seesaw. We make our way through dryness, smoke, unknowns. No, we will leap toward one another, cast fecundity out. Our minds can't hold our gifts in, can't hold our force. We give not to get, transform our destruction illusion. Our eyes, bees that race to rub pollen between their lashes. Our fingers, hummingbirds' beaks that rise to flower columns. Our toes, hermit crabs scuttling across beaches, finding safe pockets in volcanic rock. Our hair threads, spider webs attaching to plum branches firm enough for holding. Gabrielle Myers.
All right, thank you for sharing. A lot of good imagery there. There are a couple lines I really liked in that. I like your description of the hummingbird in that very first stanza. The hummingbird that you see every morning, dipping down to eye level, wing hum, eye lock, accelerated rise. I thought that was a great description, and I could vividly see hummingbirds doing that as we see them around here. And also, I like that line, that second to last stanza, our minds can't hold our gifts in, can't hold our force. I thought that was such a powerful line there. But yeah, good poem overall.
Good poem, Gabrielle. Good poem.
Thank you, Phil.
And you said this was published?
The poems I'm reading are from my collection, Break, Self, Feed, which was just published by Finishing Line Press in August of this last year, of 2024.
Okay.
So it's available on finishinglinepress.com or, of course, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, other booksellers as well.
Okay, great.
Got another one for us?
I do. This is called Spring Mostarda Making. So mostarda is an Italian sweet and sour sauce that you often pair with roasted pork. Spill yellow seeds like loose marbles to toast against hot steel. Send them to swell in plum juice, expand with balsamic's sweet acid, condensed by summer's sun, by light filtered through smoke. Ignite spice, tang, tingle. Sense how firm greenness softened to purple on weighted stems. Our orchard's branches curled in drought's evaporative pull. Our wells emptied themselves to keep us full. Our apricots, plums, figs wrinkled under heat's weight, under drought's pressure point. Now our trees' buds tumefy, tint out broad leaves. Flower after flower unfolds to rain rivers. Roots expand beyond our seasonal streams, reach out and down for sustenance, ready to rise above coming desiccation. Savor each season's water concentration. Lick each year's deluge. Taste mustard's pop, its thrust. Swirl sweet plum sacks, vinegar's sharp clearing, oil's cure rounding us, a filling. Gabrielle Myers.
Yeah, that's one of the few poems made my mouth water.
I love writing about cooking.
Yeah.
And just the act of eating as well, because there are so many kind of sensory details that you can include to bring the audience into the experience with you. And everybody loves food.
Definitely.
At least it's a common thing that we all share, thankfully.
Do you have a specialty that you like to cook?
Yeah, I did Italian farm-to-table cuisine for many years, and now I have a farm-to-fork column, and so I interview farmers, chefs, and food purveyors.
Nice.
In the Sacramento area. So I love farm fresh produce. It has a story.
Excellent. We have a restaurant in our area that's like that.
Oh, beautiful. That sounds really exciting.
It is good. We live in a rural area. We used to live in a rural area. It's kind of like creeping up on the suburbs now. But yeah, most of the stuff they grow, like their bacon and all that, they get it from local people. So all the food's local. It's a good restaurant.
That's wonderful. It's always so fresh, I think, in that way, because it's not traveling that far. And then also the gas and all the energy, to bring the food to you. So local is always, I think, better, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. Now, I wanted to ask you about the format of this poem. So obviously we're doing an audio podcast, and so the listeners can't see the poetry on the page.
Yeah.
But I found this one to be interesting in the sort of the indentations and it's kind of the flow of the words across the page as it kind of goes back and forth in the margins.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you want to say about that, or is that just how it flowed for you, or is that indicative of a specific form, or is it just how it came out?
So I purposely played with the spacing of the lines. In terms of when I space it out and I indent one line further, I want there to be a longer pause between it being read and the one before it. And so in terms of like the reading and like the breadth of the line of poetry, that's how I wanted it formatted. But then also it's a sauce and you stir a sauce. And so I wanted the lines also to be kind of another way to represent that.
That's cool. That is so cool.
Yeah, and that's what I was imagining when you were talking about it being a sauce. I was like, well, it kind of looks like you're stirring a sauce on the page. So that did jump out at me. That was like, oh, that's kind of what that looks like.
That's what I was aiming for.
So to our listeners, if you want to check that out, pick up a copy of Gabrielle's book, and you can see that poem for yourself and what it looks like and read these other poems. As we transition into that, is there anything you'd like to promote or talk about? Obviously, you have a book out. If you got other books, I do believe, too, I saw online you were recently published in another magazine or something. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've got going on in the poetry world?
Sure. Yeah. So my book, Break Self-Feed, was just released. And so I'm trying to promote that as much as possible. They're poems that I think express love and amazement with life and kind of the gravity of existing, even throughout difficult times in our lives, with love, experiences with love, and then also love loss, fires, climate change, but still really embracing a love of the earth and a love of existence. And many of the poems, I think, express that intense feeling of gravity and appreciation with life. And so that's called Break Self-Feed. I also have a memoir called Hive Mind, which is about my experience on an organic farm. And then also a lot of dramatic events that happened before and after my time on that farm. And then I have my first poetry collection, Too Many Seeds, which revolves around food and nourishment. And they're all poems that came out of a time where I was working in restaurants as a cook and chef, working at food factories, which had a totally different way of thinking about food, like mass producing it for thousands of people, and then also catering kitchens and cooking in them. So they're really about food and really what it means symbolically and literally in terms of how to nourish ourselves and each other. And that's called Too Many Seeds. All of my poetry books are right now published through Finishing Line Press, which is a wonderful press out of Kentucky, run by a female-led team, and they just do amazing work. I think bringing a lot of original poetry out into the world. And so the Finishing Line Press is the name of the press. Too Many Seeds and Break Self-Feed are the poetry books.
Okay, great. Do you have a website where all this stuff can be found as well?
I do. My website is GabrielleMyers.com, and the last name is Myers. And from there, I have links to all of my books, my interviews, my shorter published poems, and I also have a YouTube cooking channel, gluten and dairy-free recipes as well. So please check it out.
All right, we'll definitely include some links to some of that stuff as well.
I do watch YouTube food stuff. Have you ever watched Tasting History? The guy brings up historic recipes.
Oh, wow. I have to check that out. Love looking at old history in terms of recipes that people crafted. And it really tells us a lot, I think, about so much of the time, right? So also the political and like economic situations and environmental situations. What's the name of it?
I think it's called Tasting History.
Tasting History. Okay, that sounds wonderful.
I did one of the Roman recipes from that show.
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
What they fed the gladiators.
Oh, wow. Probably protein packed, right?
Actually, no, it was all carbs.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Wow.
Fava beans and barley.
Hey, you know what? That's like the perfect food, right? Protein, carb, power pack.
It's really a good podcast. Or excuse me, YouTube thing. Because it wouldn't be podcast.
In a way,
yeah. Tasting History. Check it out.
I will.
He's very good, really good research. You got another one for us? Another poem?
I do. This poem is called You Can't Fly into a Mouth Filled with Past Fears of Burning. Let dust rise 13 feet behind our car wheels. Let withered lupine give their seeds to dry soil. Let red worms spin down to find moisture near the fig's roots. Let fires that rage to our north and south burn all remnants of hope. Let hope's attachment release and float pine trees' incinerated bodies forward. Let what we tried to mold with our calloused hands crumble against our tongues. What we tried to erect out of ashes, out of a spring's trickle, couldn't sing with two hands, couldn't fly into a mouth filled with past fears of burning, into a mind clogged with memories of loss. Watercress builds and gathers near a spring's outlet. Blackberry vines grow unimpeded near a lake's lips. Let our promise move from a joining to a centering, a thrusting out from our powered center. Let our mind set on becoming more than one turn inward to clip any division, reform and align what we envision with what will grow from our fields that pop with lilting grasshoppers, splitting seed heads, shattered pine cones. Gabrielle Myers.
All right, thank you for sharing. I like this one. I think there's a lot going on in there. Seems reminiscent of what's been going on out there in California with all these fires at the moment, and sort of what's sort of like the fires in the past, but kind of looking forward to what could come and grow forth after the fact. I don't know if I'm reading into that right, but that's kind of how I envisioned some of that.
Yeah, there's so much destruction from the forest fires in California, anywhere in California now. Unfortunately, from the coast all those way straight up to the middle of the Sierra Nevada. But in that destruction, too, I think a lot of life potential can move forward if we see it that way. I think a lot of life is about how you turn your vision to appreciate what's around you. And so from the destruction, usually really a lot of fertility comes. And so I think we can cultivate that in our minds and in the world around us if we really pay attention to how destruction operates.
Definitely. And great title, by the way. I love that line. Can't fly into a mouth filled with past fears of burning. Great line and great title.
What's that quote from Jurassic Park? Life will find a way.
I love that.
Yeah. They'll show you like pictures of forest fires and like 6 months later, there's green coming up and, life will find a way.
All right. I think we'll have time if you want to share this fourth poem. Do you want to share that Green Humming Earth?
I would love to.
I like that title.
Green Humming Earth. Ladybugs' pin-like bodies pulse. Hear the frogs' moaning chins hit mud, send signals to shake pond walls. Wild golden lilies throw petals open. The ceoanthus' tails cast pollen on lily lips, fall soft against their tongues. In the field, lupine gather against hillrise. Their perfect bells build to our breaths, spring into their scents. Fall against a charred pine limb. Watch the green sprouts push from the burn. What we take forward, nymphs gathering to dance at sunset. Thousands of baby dragonflies rise forward into fecund amber light. Double wings lost in their potential, vibrating against the edges of each other's wings. Gabrielle Myers.
Really descriptive.
Yeah, it reminds me of spring, or just the coming of spring in general. Everything's starting to sprout and come forth. And I love those last two lines about the dragonflies, the double wings lost in their potential, vibrating against the edges of each other's wings. Very cool line there. Spent a lot of time on lakes, kayaking and such. And so I've watched a lot of dragonflies flying around and, landing on the kayak and landing on some of the vegetation and rocks in the water.
Remarkable little critters. They are.
Really. So that was kind of a neat image there of the dragonflies. All right. Well, thank you for sharing these. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about or talk about with poetry, or any last thoughts for us?
I love poetry, and thank you guys so much for creating this podcast and sharing poetry with a greater world. I think that there's something really special about a poem, and it's concise, it's to the point, but it really captures a powerful moment in time, and it transcends, I think, the moments too at the same time, and speaks to kind of a greater whole and understanding of existence. And really, it's a way to pay homage to our existence in a sacred way. So it's a beautiful space, I think, for us to practice writing and practice being awake and kind of aware of what is before us in the world that we can appreciate.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on all of that.
Do you teach a poetry class at the college?
I do, actually.
Excellent. Sweet.
I teach an intro to creative writing class at San Joaquin Delta College in Stockton, California. It's an excellent community college. And actually, we just worked on a creative writing certificate of achievement. So the students can take a sequence of courses in creative writing and then also learn about publishing and literary arts. So it's a really wonderful certificate for our students to really take their writing seriously.
And if any of them want to be on this podcast, let them know.
Let them know.
I will.
Yeah, Yeah, we're always looking for new guests, and that's great that you're doing that. I love to see poetry alive in the academic world and just the world in general. Like when we started doing this, we were kind of isolated here, and I wanted to do a poetry podcast, but I didn't want it to just be me reading my poetry. So I was like, well, let's create this podcast where we have a guest on, let other people share their voice and share their poetry with the world. And so that's kind of blown up to this whole thing where we're beating people across the whole world.
Right. Malaysia,
And just
Australia,
yeah, learning about
Europe.
how they view poetry and how they express their lives and what they've got going on, in their lives and society and stuff through their poetry. So it's been really neat. All right, as we wrap things up, we want to let our listeners know we are grateful that you've taken the time to tune in. We hope you're enjoying the poetry shared here, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast and share it with others. Now that the Year of the Poet community is expanding at a rapid rate, we have set up a Patreon site for those who would like to show their support for Year the Poet. You can find us on buymeacoffee.com/yearthepoet. Thank you for your support as we continue to grow. If you've written any poetry and you want to share it here, whether you just have an interest in poetry, consider yourself an amateur poet, or are a professional poet with published works, contact us to be a guest on a future episode. Please check us out on all our social media things. We've got the website at yearthepoet.com. You can find us on Facebook. We're getting our episodes up on YouTube, so please check us out there at You're the Poet Podcast. You can also find us on Instagram as we try to get that going at You're the Poet Podcast. And if you'd like to give us some feedback or be a guest on a future episode, email us at host@you'rethepoet.com. All right, until next time, Phil, thanks for joining us.
This was a good one. Yeah. Thank you.
Gabrielle, thank you for being our guest.
Thank you, Matt and Phil. It's been such a pleasure.
All right, thank you guys. Goodbye.